Growing older brings a wealth of experiences and wisdom, a lifetime of memories and lessons learned through both joy and hardship. However, it can also present unexpected challenges, particularly in relationships with the very children you dedicated so much of your life to raising. You have spent decades nurturing, supporting, and sacrificing for them, only to find that as they grow into adults, they may seem to drift away or even treat you with indifference. The warmth of childhood hugs and laughter around the dinner table may be replaced with unanswered calls, distant conversations, or even outright disrespect. If you find yourself in this difficult situation, you may experience feelings of confusion, frustration, or deep sorrow. It's natural to ask, where did I go wrong? Why don't they appreciate everything I've done? However, rather than dwelling on the pain, the most effective response is to approach the situation with calmness, wisdom, and proactive steps. By adjusting your perspective and taking deliberate actions, you can potentially mend the fractures in your relationships and find inner peace. Let's explore some heartfelt strategies to navigate this delicate phase, drawing from the experiences of many who have walked this path before you. Number 1. Embrace self-reflection. Before jumping to conclusions about your children's behavior, take a step back and reflect on your own actions over the years. Relationships, no matter how deep, are shaped by experiences and communication patterns that develop over time. Ask yourself honestly, have there been moments where I unintentionally hurt or misunderstood my child? Sometimes our best intentions can be misinterpreted. A mother once shared that her son began distancing himself after feeling overly monitored during his college years. She had always called to check in, offered advice, and expressed concern, but instead of feeling loved, her son felt suffocated. What she saw as care, he experienced as control. Only after recognizing how her actions may have contributed to his withdrawal did she take steps to change. She apologized, gave him more space, and slowly, their relationship improved. Self-reflection doesn't mean blaming yourself, but it does mean being open to understanding the dynamics at play and adjusting your approach where necessary. 2. Foster open and honest communication. Distance and resentment often grow in silence. If you feel a disconnect, initiate a sincere conversation with your children. Choose a calm, relaxed setting and express your feelings without assigning blame. Instead of saying, "You never call me anymore," try saying, "I've noticed we don't talk as much lately and I miss you. I'd love to know how you're doing." This approach encourages dialogue rather than defensiveness. For example, Robert noticed that his daughter avoided visiting. Instead of assuming she didn't care, he gently asked her if something was bothering her. To his surprise, she revealed that she often felt judged during their conversations, as he would frequently criticize her career choices. Once he became aware of this, he made a conscious effort to be more supportive rather than critical. Over time, their bond strengthened. When you communicate, focus on listening as much as talking. Your children may have their own unspoken struggles, and offering them a space to share without fear of criticism can lead to reconciliation. 3. Set and respect boundaries. While being open to communication is essential, it's equally important to establish and respect boundaries. If your children exhibit disrespectful or dismissive behaviors, it's okay to make it clear that such treatment is unacceptable. Consider Linda's story. She found that her son would only reach out when he needed financial help, often speaking to her dismissively. After years of enduring this, she calmly but firmly expressed that while she loved him unconditionally, she would no longer tolerate being treated as an ATM or an afterthought. By setting this boundary, she reclaimed her dignity and self-respect. Over time, her son learned to approach their relationship differently, with more appreciation and respect. Boundaries create healthier relationships by ensuring that love is mutual and not one-sided. 4. Seek external support. Sometimes, bridging a gap with your children requires guidance beyond what you can manage alone. Seeking help from a therapist, family counselor, or even a supportive community can offer new perspectives and solutions. James, a widowed father, felt abandoned by his only daughter. Instead of letting resentment build, he joined a senior support group. Through conversations with others who had similar experiences, he realized that his daughter's withdrawal was less about him and more about her unresolved grief over her mother's passing. Encouraged by his support group, he wrote his daughter a heartfelt letter, acknowledging her pain and expressing his love. That single act opened the door to healing. Seeking external help doesn't mean you've failed. It means you care enough to find a way forward. 5. Prioritize self-care. When your children ignore you, it's easy to let sadness consume you. But your happiness should never depend solely on them. It's essential to nurture your own well-being by engaging in activities that bring you joy. Whether it's learning a new hobby, traveling, joining a community group, or simply spending time with friends, focusing on yourself can have a positive ripple effect. Maria, for example, felt empty after her children became busy with their own families. Instead of allowing loneliness to consume her, she took up gardening, joined a local choir, and even started writing poetry. As she focused on her passions, her children began to notice, admiring her newfound independence and enthusiasm for life. Your self-worth is not determined by how often your children call. It's found in how fully you live your own life. 6. Lead by example. Respect is a two-way street. If you want to be treated with kindness and understanding, demonstrate those values first. Children, no matter how old they are, tend to mirror the behavior they see in their parents. If you react to their indifference with anger or bitterness, they may retreat further. But if you approach them with patience, dignity, and unwavering kindness, they may eventually reflect the same back to you. Consider George's story. His son often dismissed his advice, treating him like he was out of touch. At first, George felt frustrated and hurt. He wanted to push back, argue, and prove he was still knowledgeable and capable. But instead, he made a conscious decision to change his approach. He started listening more and only offering advice when his son directly asked for it. Over time, his son noticed his father's wisdom and began valuing his input again. Your actions teach your children how to treat you. If you become defensive or push too hard, they may withdraw further. But if you model the kind of respect and patience you desire, they are more likely to follow suit. Leading by example doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It means responding in a way that fosters growth and connection rather than deepening the divide. 7. Embrace empathy. Life is hard, and your children may be dealing with struggles they haven't shared with you. In today's fast-paced world, many adults are overwhelmed with financial stress, demanding jobs, raising their own children, and trying to maintain some semblance of balance. What might seem like neglect or disinterest in their relationship with you could actually be exhaustion or even personal struggles they don't know how to verbalize. Samantha's son, David, rarely called. She felt rejected and hurt, assuming he had simply lost interest in their relationship. But one day, she visited him unannounced and was taken aback by what she saw. David looked exhausted, juggling work demands and parenting 2 young children. It wasn't that he didn't care, he was simply drained. Instead of confronting him about his lack of communication, Samantha made a different choice. She began sending him small messages of encouragement. No expectations, just simple, supportive words. Over time, he started calling her more, not out of obligation, but because he knew she was a source of comfort rather than guilt. Empathy allows you to see beyond your own pain and into the reality of your children's lives. When you shift from feeling abandoned to understanding their struggles, you create a space for compassion. That doesn't mean excusing outright disrespect, but it does mean recognizing that their behavior may not always reflect their love for you. It may simply reflect their own burdens. 8. Accept and adapt. Despite all your efforts, some relationships may never return to what they once were, and that's okay. Life changes, people change, and sometimes relationships take a path that we never expected. Holding on to a rigid idea of what the parent-child dynamic should look like can lead to endless disappointment. Instead, learning to accept and adapt allows you to find peace and joy in the present. Henry had two sons, one who called weekly and one who rarely responded. For years, he focused on the son who ignored him, feeling heartbroken each time his calls went unanswered. But one day, Henry had a realization. Instead of fixating on what was missing, he could appreciate what he still had. He shifted his energy toward nurturing the relationship with the son who did reach out. He also started building friendships with neighbors, reconnecting with distant relatives, and even joining a local club where he found new companionship. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up on your children or ignoring the pain of their absence. It simply means letting go of the need to control the outcome and finding fulfillment in other areas of your life. If one door seems closed, don't stand in front of it forever, knocking in vain. Turn around and see how many others are still open to you. Your life is still valuable, your happiness still matters, and your ability to love and be loved is not solely dependent on your children's attention. By accepting what is and adapting to new circumstances, you give yourself the freedom to experience joy, no matter what. 9. Create a legacy of love. Your role as a parent doesn't have to be the sole definition of who you are. While your children may be distant, there are others who need and appreciate your wisdom, love, and guidance. Consider mentoring young people, volunteering at a community center, or teaching a skill you've mastered. When you invest in others, you leave a legacy that extends beyond your immediate family. Think of Maria, a retired teacher who felt forgotten by her adult children. Instead of letting loneliness consume her, she began tutoring underprivileged kids at the local library. The children adored her, and she found deep fulfillment in their gratitude and eagerness to learn. By creating a new sense of purpose, Maria discovered that love and respect can come from many places, not just from her biological family. A legacy of love isn't just about big gestures. It's about small acts of kindness, the wisdom you pass down, and the connections you make. You still have so much to give, and there are people out there who would cherish the chance to learn from you. 10. Stay engaged in life. It's easy to feel as though your best years are behind you, but that couldn't be further from the truth. This stage of life can be rich with new experiences, opportunities, and adventures. Keeping yourself mentally and physically engaged brings joy to your own life and makes you someone others, including your children, will want to be around. Take inspiration from Robert, who took up painting in his 70s. His children were often too busy to visit, but rather than waiting for them to bring happiness into his life, he created it himself. He joined an art class, made new friends, and even started showcasing his work in local galleries. When his children saw how engaged and fulfilled he was, they began visiting more, eager to hear about his latest projects. Your happiness shouldn't be dependent on whether or not your children reach out. Pursue hobbies, travel, join clubs, or learn something new. When you radiate joy and fulfillment, people, including your children, will naturally be drawn to you. 11. Focus on gratitude. It's natural to grieve the loss of the close bond you once had with your children, but dwelling on the negatives can darken your spirit. Instead, try shifting your perspective by appreciating what you do have, rather than lamenting what's missing. Consider Paul, who started keeping a gratitude journal after feeling ignored by his adult daughter. Each morning, he wrote down 3 things he was grateful for. Sometimes big things, like a call from an old friend, and sometimes small things, like a beautiful sunset. Over time, he realized that his happiness wasn't solely tied to his daughter's attention, and he felt lighter and more at peace. Gratitude has the power to change your entire outlook. Start with small acknowledgements, a good meal, a kind neighbor, or a moment of laughter. The more you focus on gratitude, the more contentment and joy will fill your days. 12. Forgive and let go. Holding on to resentment is like carrying a heavy burden. It only weighs you down. Even if your children never acknowledge their actions, forgiving them releases you from the emotional toll of anger and disappointment. Think of Janet, whose son barely spoke to her after moving across the country. For years, she carried hurt and resentment, replaying their last argument in her mind. But one day, she made a conscious decision to forgive him, not for his sake, but for hers. She wrote him a letter, not expecting a response, but simply expressing her love and forgiveness. Though he never replied, Janet felt a newfound sense of peace, knowing she had done her part to let go of the pain. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning bad behavior. It means freeing yourself from its grip. When you let go of resentment, you open your heart to new possibilities for joy and connection. 13. Find your own happiness. At the end of the day, the most important relationship you have is the one with yourself. Your happiness should not be dependent on whether or not your children respect or acknowledge you. While their love is meaningful, it is not the sole measure of your worth. Joyce, a widow in her late 60s, found herself feeling invisible to her children. Instead of waiting for them to make her happy, she took charge of her own joy. She joined a hiking group, started a small garden, and even began traveling with a group of fellow retirees. Through these activities, she rediscovered her zest for life. And interestingly, when her children saw how vibrant and content she was, they became more eager to be part of her life again. Happiness is a choice, and it's yours to make. Seek out what brings you joy, whether it's nature, friendships, creativity, or simply moments of peace. You are still deserving of a fulfilling, meaningful life. 14. Surround yourself with positivity. The company you keep significantly influences your mindset and emotional well-being. If your children are distant or unresponsive, it's crucial to seek out relationships that uplift and support you. This might mean strengthening bonds with old friends, forming new friendships, or getting involved in social groups that share your interests. Take inspiration from Evelyn, who found herself feeling isolated after her children moved to different states and barely visited. Instead of wallowing in loneliness, she decided to join a local book club. What started as a simple weekly gathering turned into a source of deep friendship and connection. Through her new friends, she found joy in conversation, laughter, and a renewed sense of belonging. Over time, her children noticed how fulfilled she was and began reaching out more often, realizing that she wasn't simply waiting around for their attention. You deserve to be around people who bring you joy and appreciation. Whether it's a support group, a faith community, or a hobby club, actively surrounding yourself with positivity will uplift your spirit and remind you that love exists in many forms. 15. Leave the door open without expectation. Healing takes time, and change doesn't happen overnight. While it's painful to feel ignored or disrespected by your children, holding on to bitterness or pushing them for immediate reconciliation can sometimes drive them further away. Instead, adopt a mindset of openness without expectation. Consider Mark, whose daughter distanced herself after a family disagreement. Rather than chasing after her or demanding an apology, he simply maintained an open-hearted approach. He sent her occasional texts, nothing heavy, just warm and light-hearted messages. He made sure she knew he loved her, but he let go of the need for an immediate response. After 2 years of silence, his daughter finally reached out, admitting that she had needed space but always appreciated his steady, gentle presence. Leaving the door open means continuing to show love in small ways, whether through a birthday card, a short check-in message, or simply letting them know you're there when they're ready. However, the key is to detach from expectation. Do it not because you're waiting for them to come back, but because love, when given freely, has a way of finding its way back in unexpected ways. Life's journey is filled with changes, and relationships evolve in ways we may not always expect. If your children have become distant or disrespectful, remember that your worth is not determined by their actions. You have a lifetime of wisdom, love, and experiences to share, And there are many paths to fulfillment beyond just the parent-child relationship. Let go of bitterness, embrace peace, and live fully. Surround yourself with love, whether it comes from friends, community, or new relationships you cultivate. Keep the door open for your children, but don't let their absence dictate your happiness. You are valuable, you are worthy, and your story is still unfolding. Choose to fill it with joy, purpose, and self-respect. Feel free to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If this video was helpful, kindly give it a thumbs up and pass it along to someone who might need it. Hit the subscribe button for more tips on living the best life in your senior years. Take care and thank you for watching.